Hey, we want to welcome you to today's seminar. We'll call it Money Mondays. Uh, we're going to do 2 Mondays of discussion about money matters. We'll look at the investment side and we'll also look at the debt side. We want you to be money responsible. And Danielle, your last
Taylor.
I'm joined by
Yeah, I'll get it
Miss
here.
Danielle Taylor. I'm Dr. Robert Bennett, and I apologize.
No, that's okay. Danielle Taylor, and I teach accounting.
Miss Taylor teaches in accounting. I also teach in management and also. But we just want you to be responsible. We want you to have a plan. It's not that hard to invest. It's not that hard to be what I would call money responsible, but you have to know a few things, and that's what we hope to share with you today. And also next Monday, we're going to have a follow-up seminar, but we want to welcome you here today, and we're not going to take a lot of your time, but we do want you to have some key things to remember. And I'm going to speak for a few minutes, and then I'm going to turn it over to Miss Taylor. She's going to focus more on the debt side and some things to remember. What I want to talk about is, and I guess we've sort of put a little hook in here to get you interested in it. I want to talk to you about how to invest and frankly show you how it's not that hard to be a millionaire one day. Hopefully by the time you're 50, 55, we want you to be able to have enough money to retire when you get to that age. And so I've got some handouts for you to take a look at there. And I guess we'll provide a handout to go along with the video as well. But a couple things to think about. There's two types of investments that somebody can have. There's more than two types, but from a retirement standpoint, you're probably going to invest in something we call a fixed income investment, which would be like a bond, corporate bond, U.S. government bond, municipals, things like that. Over the years, those have returned anywhere from 4 to 6% per year. When I say over the years, the last 30, 40, 50 years, those have returned in single digits. There's pros and cons to the different types of investments. The big pro for the thing in favor of what we call fixed income investments is that they're relatively safe. Now, on the flip side, we have stock investments. Stock investments are going to give you more return. On average, over the last 30, 40, 50 years, those have returned in excess of 10%. We had a bad year in 2022. I think we lost around 20% during 2022, but we gained around a little over 20% during 2021. So it bounces back and forth. When I say that the average is double digits, it doesn't mean that you're going to get that every year. But on average, you're going to make those kind of returns. So which one should you invest in? Somebody my age, I'm in my 50s, I probably ought to be more invested in the safer investments, the bonds, the fixed income. However, I'm still pretty heavily invested in the stock market. Somebody your age, or most of you in here, you would be more interested in investing in stocks. And to give you a little rule of thumb, take your age and subtract it from 110. This is called the rule of 110. So for me, I'm 54 years old, so about probably in the 60, 65% range of stocks. Whatever you get, you should be invested in stocks. So for you, if you're 20, you take that away from 110, then most of your investments are going to be in stocks. There's more, I guess, a greater chance that you could have some lost years, but you've got so many years before retirement, you can afford to take that risk. And that's another important thing, is always think about risk. The more time you have to invest, like you guys are very young, you've got a lot of years before retirement, you're willing to take on more risk. The closer you get to retirement, the less risk you're willing to take. All right, let's see here. Let me give you a couple of thoughts here. First of all, on your handout, if you can invest, I think the key to investment is don't ever get to where you're used to that money. So you're gonna get your first job here in the next year or two. You're gonna graduate here from Georgia Southwestern, and maybe you'll get an MBA, who knows, but within the next few years, you're going to be making money. And what you should do is sit down and figure out, what can you live without every year? And if you don't ever get used to it, if you ever take the approach, I'll invest later, I'll wait till later. Maybe by the time I'm 30, I'll stop investing. First of all, there's two problems with that. The first problem with that is you need to be investing now. It's incredible the power of time. If you can start early and invest more early, I've seen statistics on this. If you start now and invest until you're about 35, you're far better off than if you wait till you're 35 and invest, for the rest of your life. The key is to get the money in the market early. And I wanted to give you a website, calculator.net, and you can click on financial calculators. What I would encourage you to do, and I thought about doing some of these today, but we really don't have time to go through all the examples, but there's an investment calculator, there's a mortgage calculator, I'm going to talk briefly about that in a second. There is a retirement calculator. In other words, how much do you have to have by the time you turn 65 to draw out, say, $8,000–9,000 a month to live on for the rest of your life. So there's some incredible calculators on there. And to go back to my main point, invest now. The other problem with waiting is that you'll get used to that money. The money that you make. I've always heard the saying that you can spend every dime you make. And so you're better off before you get used to making it, go ahead and invest it. All right, so just to give you a couple of round numbers here, let me talk just briefly about regular investments, stock investments. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with a bond investment, or even with interest rates going up, you can get 3.5% on a on a CD, on a certificate of deposit. You can get over 4% on a U.S. Treasury security, which is very secure, which is very safe. And those are pretty good returns. On average, over the years, you're going to actually make more than that. But a lot of people have stayed away from those types of safe investments because, number one, the rates were really low. Number two, the stock market, on average, makes a lot more than that. But typically, people your age are going to invest more in stocks. So just a few thoughts. If you could somehow or another come up, now I'm going to talk just on your own here. First of all, where do you go to invest stocks? I just wanted to tell you real quick, you've got two types of brokers. You've got discount brokers who charge very little to do brokerage services. Brokers basically go to the market and buy stock on your behalf. And so some of your discount brokers, y'all have heard of Robinhood, you probably have heard of Scottrade, TD Ameritrade, Schwab, Fidelity, E-Trade. Those are all discount brokers. Very inexpensive, but they don't provide a lot of service. They basically take your order and make it happen. Now, there are also what we call super discount brokers, or maybe discount plus brokers. I've heard it called a few different things, where they are starting to offer more services. So you go to them and say, do you think I ought to buy Coke, or you think I ought to buy Pepsi? You think I ought to buy Walmart or Amazon? And they actually give you, they may not tell you what they think you ought to buy, but they'll say, here, look at this, study this. They'll give you information. So it's a little bit more than just a discount broker. Now on the flip side, we've got full service brokers. Y'all have heard of these, Merrill Lynch. You may have seen the ad on TV, Fisher Investments. They're what you call a fiduciary. They don't make money until you make money. Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, Raymond James, Edward Jones, Citigroup, y'all are all familiar with these brokers. What you basically do is pay them a fee, and they help you manage your money. And you may want to consider this, you probably do want to do this unless you have time to study. Now, I'm talking about investments in stocks themselves. What I'm going to recommend for most people is investment in either mutual funds. A mutual fund is a group of stocks. It's well balanced, well diversified. In other words, there's not overexposure to any one company or any one sector. You can also invest in something called an exchange traded fund, which is basically, it's almost like an index fund. You're investing in a type of investment like tech. Some of the different groups of investments we have is high tech. That's your big computer companies, software, apps, what's the word I'm looking for? Chip companies, anything related to technology would be in that sector. You got your financials, you got your retail, and you can pretty much get exposure or get investments in whole sectors, which takes some of the risk away. It's not like you're betting on one company, you're betting on a much, much larger group of companies, so you can invest in sectors. Excuse me. Also, mutual funds depends on what your investment objectives are. If somebody your age, somebody young like you, you're probably interested in more growth type stocks. You're not interested in a dividend. Somebody more my age or older might want what we call a dividend stock or an income stock because they need the money. Maybe they're retired, maybe they're living off the money. It's also safer. But for somebody that's, I'm going to say, under 30, certainly probably under 35 or 40, you want to be somewhat aggressive just because, again, you have a lot of time. If you do have a lost year, you got more time to make it up. All right, so going back to our, and my recommendation would be if you want to play around with some stock investments, which I think most people are at your age. I know I did. I wanted to invest in stocks. So when I first started, I came up with a number that I thought I could live without each month. If you can come up with about $600 a month, now that sounds like a lot of money, but when you start doing the math, you've all heard the example of live without a Starbucks coffee per day. When you start doing the math, it's amazing how much money you can save and invest in the stock market or invest in, different types of investments. Eat out a couple times less per week. Instead of having a steak dinner, eat chicken again. The key places where you can save money, for example, Ms. Taylor's going to talk about the credit card debt, student debt, things like that. If you carry a credit card balance with where rates are, you're eating up an incredible amount of income each month just paying interest. You're not actually reducing the debt. Think about a car payment. If you can live with a slightly less fancy car, you hear people now having $1,000 car payments. Get by with a used car and invest. And like I say, it's important that you do it now. So I'm not sitting here saying don't have any fun or don't have the car you want or don't do this or don't take a vacation or anything. But what I am telling you is if you can somehow or another manage to scrape together, $600 or so and put that in the stock market starting soon after you graduate. And again, the quicker you start, the better. You will be a millionaire by the time you're 50 years old if you'll do that. And you actually are a lot better off, and when I say that, you'll be a millionaire if trends hold, if we continue to have the same types of returns that we've had. But those trends are very durable. We see those happening year after year, somewhere in the 10%, 11%, even 12% return year after year. All right, so that's my first example. Now, go back to your handout that I gave you. How you really can save some money for retirement is to utilize your company's 401k. You sometimes hear it called IRAs. There's some tax advantages to different types of IRA. I know you got the Roth IRA, tax deferment, things like that. But the key with a 401k or a company retirement plan And to be honest with you, I don't know that I would go to work for a company that doesn't offer a substantial retirement plan. People are just in too much demand now. You know, you're smart, you're knowledgeable. You need to demand that there is or look for a company that has a retirement. And I'll tell you why, because it's very lucrative. So let's say that you're making, I don't know, $40,000 a year to start with, maybe more. Well, the way this works is, say you can live without, I don't know, 6, 7, 8% of your salary, and you're going to put that into your 401k. You're basically deferring that, and you're going to work harder now, make that money, and then defer that for your retirement. The beauty of this is that your company will match that up to a certain amount. Some really progressive companies can match, I don't know, from a tax standpoint, 5, 6, 7%. You know, they'll actually give you a substantial raise. All they're
Basically,
asking,
double your money right away.
basically, yeah, you get a huge raise. So this example I gave up here, where you come up with, say, $600 a month, you know, you can come up with much less than that. Now, what I would recommend you do is have some stock investments on the side. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But I've always kind of considered that my play money. I kind of had an account, I throw it into a savings account, and then I would buy stocks. And you can go to these discount brokers. Used to be you had to buy 100 shares of stock. These days you can buy half of a share of a stock. You can buy, you know, small amounts of different mutual funds. You know, you may have 10 different mutual funds as part of your pie that you're investing in. I used to invest in individual stocks because I had more time to study. I would really study the stock, kind of a hobby. And a lot of people really enjoy that. If you enjoy it, please do it.
I don't have time for it either. I mean, mutual funds all the way.
Yeah. Everything I've got now is mutual funds. First of all, I didn't have the personality for individual stocks. I would be obsessed.
I'm too risk averse.
I was following them, yeah, and I was obsessed with them. With mutual funds, you know, set it and forget it, as the old commercial says. Just invest in funds. And you can invest in, like I said earlier, so many different types of mutual funds. I have not done it yet, but I've finally become convinced that cryptocurrency is a decent investment. I don't want to put too much in it. It's risky.
I'm not there yet. I'm too risk averse.
Well, the reason I think cryptocurrency is worthwhile is I think that will eventually be a major source of payment with the supply chains, and it'll take out a lot of transaction costs. So, and when I say I want to invest in cryptocurrency, I'm talking about a small amount, a little bit every month, where if I lose all of it, it won't matter. I don't think I'll lose all of it, but that's kind of the way you invest. Have some play money, some money that you can afford to take a little more risk, and then have your retirement account too. So going back to my example with the retirement account, if you invest, say, I don't know, let's say $300 a month, and then your company matches it with another $400 a month, you know, so we're talking less than $1,000 a month there into your retirement account. By the time you retire at age, 65, 66, depending on when you want to retire, with historical returns, you'll have well over $2 million saved for your retirement. The key is to start now, and the key, I've always said, the more you can invest, the quicker you can invest, the better off you're going to be at the end. In fact, I've heard examples of you're better off to invest now for a while and then quit than you are to wait and then start later. All right, the other thing is when you get raises, I've always heard the old cliche, you know, you can end up spending every raise you make. Every time you make a raise, you need to have a little discipline and say that same percentage that you're putting away is extra that goes in there. And you're going, you know, if you're competent, you're going to get a lot of raises. Let's see here. Let me change gears just a little bit, going back to my investments in stock. One of the things I've always done is called a dividend reinvestment program. I've looked for individual stocks that reinvest in dividends. One of the problems with investing is that there's fees associated with buying stock. And so a DRIP, a dividend reinvestment program, there's no fees associated with it. There's also no tax consequences. If you get a cash, I guess one of the problems with stocks in general is double taxation. the company has to pay taxes, and then when you get your dividend, you get taxed again. So with DRIP, when they pay you actually with a portion of a share, or maybe a full share, and I guess there are tax consequences, but they're later when you actually sell the stock. So do that. If you want to invest in individual stocks, you need to know what you're looking for. And obviously, what you hear about companies means a lot. You think about who uses the product now and who could potentially use it. Do they have a lot of international growth opportunity? I guess what I'm talking about here are just sort of general consequences, what makes a stock good. And then, you have to know how to look at the financial statements and to understand how well the company's doing. And obviously that's beyond the scope of this class today, but let me just throw out something called the PE ratio, the price to earnings. What that means is how rich is the stock, how expensive is the stock relative to the earnings of the company. You don't want a PE ratio much over about 20 times. So if you think about it, what that means is you got to wait 20 years of current earnings to get your stock back, to get your investment back. If the earnings are growing rapidly, you can afford to pay a little bit more than 20 times earnings for the company. So pay attention to the PE, and obviously growth in earnings is going to be one of the key things we look for in growth stocks. All right, the next thing I want to say, and I'm going to start wrapping up here real quick for Ms. Taylor to come in and finish, but I've always said look for investments in things that you understand or things that you like. So over the years, I've invested in from the stock standpoint, I was a banker for many years. So I understand banks. I know what a good bank looks like versus maybe a bank that's struggling. And so I've always invested in bank stocks just because, I knew what I was looking for, I guess. So if you know an industry, that's a good way to invest. And if you're not interested in investing in individual banks, there are some financial mutual funds that you can invest with, and actually some ETFs too. Another thing I did, I've always been kind of an outdoors kind of guy. I used to do a lot of hunting, I don't anymore, but I got really interested in fancy shotguns. And so I bought 4 or 5 what I'll call expensive shotguns, nothing just crazy fancy. And it's amazing how those have appreciated over the years. I can sell all those now. Every one of them I can sell for double what I paid for them here a few years, not really that long ago.
My husband does guitars.
But it purchases guitars and just, kind of buying whole. But in the meantime, he can enjoy.
He loves playing them.
Loves to play them.
Looking at them, holding them.
That's right. Well, and art would be another, art, if you know what you're doing. Now, that's the key. You better know what you're doing. Another thing I did a couple times is I would buy a small tract of land, like 10 acres, 12 acres, 20 acres, whatever. I actually bought 100 acres one time. And I would go in, I love to drive my tractor, so I would go in there and just clean it up and build roads and make it really nice. And burn it, make it really pretty good, nice for wildlife, and then turn around and sell it and make a profit. I actually bought some land with a cabin on it one time, all about because I understood those types of investments. So these are things outside of stock investments. I'm not good at this, but I've got a lot of friends who bought smaller houses and they've gone in, they're kind of handy type people, and put a nice coat of paint, maybe change out the fixtures, change out the kitchen, put stainless steel appliances, and I'm talking maybe 6 months it would take them. They would flip those things and make an absolute fortune, or either rent them out. They hold on to them and rent them out. And what's beautiful about that is the whole time that you're getting that rental income, the house is appreciating too. So you get that in investments. We say you got recurring income or like dividends, and then you got the capital appreciation. The house itself got more valuable. My uncle, this is my last example, he used to buy what I would call underappreciated houses at Lake Martin. He was Lake Martin is over in Alabama, beautiful lake. And he would buy a house that just kind of needed a little TLC, and he would fix it up. The big thing he did is he would work on the yard. He'd make the yard really nice. And so when you walked in, you were kind of carried away with how beautiful it was and how beautiful the house was. And I think he went through about he would enjoy it in the meantime, and he went through about 6 or 7 of those and ended up making a lot of money, and still has a big house over at Lake Martin in Alabama. But now the key here is buy low, sell high. What's amazing is how many people buy high and sell low. So when the stock market's, and research proves this, when the stock market is flying high, people all of a sudden say, hey, I want to invest in the stock market. The time to invest is when things are low. So if let's say, right now we've got a lot of inflation, there's a lot of people worried about the stock market. Stock market is still relatively high, but is there a good chance it'll go down? Some people are calling for a correction. You need to be ready to buy if you're going to buy individual stocks or mutual funds to buy in times when they're low. The best decision I ever made is the 2008 financial crisis was absolutely a crisis. It was terrible. It was almost as bad as the Great Depression in a lot of ways. We thought the financial world was going to really fall apart. I was in banking at the time. But one of the greatest decisions I ever made is I actually called up my broker in my retirement, and I said, I want to double the amount of my contribution. And I timed it just right. And actually, after things really went up and corrected, I didn't go back to my original amount, but I came off the double. But I call that doubling down. When things are low, go ahead and double down and put more into it. And that's one reason, that decision is one reason I've got a good retirement to this day. All right, last couple things I want to say before I turn it over to Ms. Taylor is from a mortgage standpoint or from a car payment, less is more. Don't try to max out. You hear all these ratios about how much house you can afford and how much of your income can go to debt, still around 41%.
It is bonkers.
But don't do
Listen
that.
to it. Do not do what you're approved for.
Yeah,
That is bad.
don't do that. Or was it 28% for your house
I mean,
mortgage?
they will still approve you for just, we bought
Yeah.
a house in 2019. I remember them telling us we were approved for like double.
Yeah.
Or something, just something ridiculous.
It's
Don't
crazy.
base it on that.
And of course, what they want to do is make money on it, and then they're going to sell your mortgage, so they don't really care.
It's
But
in their interest.
it is. It max it out. They're going to make more fee if they max you out. So that would be one big thing: is don't max out anything. Don't max out your credit cards. I'm telling you, you can eat up, easily $200, $300, $400 a month just paying interest on a credit card.
What we did was look at our budget, decided a payment, and then went to that calculator you said.
Yeah.
And kind of back into, okay, if we want our payment to be around here, then this is what house we can.
So calculator.net, let me throw that out again. Just go in there and play around with some numbers. Look at your retirement, look at your mortgage. The problem with the housing market now is it is high. So any house you get these days, you're going to be paying a lot more. But I'm telling you, if you can, less is more. If you can get less, and then take my advice up here, this magic $600 is kind of what it takes at your age to get to $1 million by the time you're 50, or let's say 51, 52. But if you can only come up with 400, think about how much further you'll be. And like I say, things you can give up. Think about all the things you can give up that gives you that. It will really make a difference in the later years of your life. I think the key here is don't think about now, think about later. Quick thing about the mortgage. You can get a 15-year mortgage or you can get a 30-year mortgage. Typically the 15-year rate is better than the 30-year rate, but there's never a penalty for early payment. I've always told people go ahead and get the 30-year mortgage and then pay extra. So if you get a 30-year mortgage, if you can pay an extra $200 a month, that 30-year mortgage will become more like a 24-year mortgage. You knock like 6 years off the life of your mortgage just by paying a couple $100 a month. But the key, and then like a car payment, they'll give you a 7-year car note. which means that your payment is lower, but you're paying a ton in interest. And these days, not nearly as low as they used to be. So, a year or two ago, you didn't mind paying extra because of the rate, you didn't mind going longer because the interest rates are lower. Nowadays, they're much higher. But I guess the key thing here is you have to have some discipline and you need to think about the future. A couple of little key things to remember is have a plan, be thinking about the future, assess your risk. No amount of return is worth taking on too much risk. If you lose your entire investment, it doesn't matter what kind of returns you were looking for. You get zero if you lose your investment. Diversify, which basically means don't put all your eggs in one basket. You different types of investments. Even if you're totally in stocks, you want to invest in a lot of different sectors. The tech sector has been up and down. You think about like a consumer staples sector, like bread or toothpaste, things people are going to have regardless of the economy. You want to have a little bit of the more risky type, you want to have a little bit of the less risky type to go with it. Don't ever chase tips. You'll hear people say, hey, look at that stock. Hey, you ought to invest in that stock. First of all, unless you know something about it or unless you can learn a lot about it, you probably don't want to invest in it. But people will give you a lot of tips. Don't speculate, don't gamble. Stock investment is a little bit of a gamble. Invest regularly. In other words, if you can tie it to your income where you're putting a little bit in there all along, you're going to be better off. And then, reinvest if you can. Whenever you take that money out, you're going to pay taxes. So always reinvest. Warren Buffett, one of the greatest investors of all time, Google him if you don't know who it is. He said there's no substitute for owning good companies. You want to be sure that you're investing in good companies. His famous quote is, it's more important to own a wonderful company at a fair price than it is to own a fair company at a wonderful price. So there's no bargains out there, but you do need to understand that there's no substitute for a good company. So be sure you invest in good companies. If you don't know how to choose a good company, hire somebody like a mutual fund or one of the full service brokers to help you identify good companies. But the last thing I want to say to you, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Taylor, is start now. Now's the time to start. You're young. Be investing. A little bit invested now will be a whole lot more later. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Taylor.
So Dr. Bennett was really positive about all the ways you can grow your money, how interest can work for you. And I'm going to kind of flip it around and be a little bit more negative. I'm going to say, I'm going to talk more about debt. And basically what happens if you're the one borrowing the money instead of the one investing the money. So I tried to just kind of think through some questions that I've heard some of you ask me kind of during a class or office hours or things like that, just to kind of jotted down some common questions that I get from students. And I'm going to just try to kind of hit the high points. But if you have questions, you can raise your hand, interrupt me. I'm happy to try to dig into it a little bit further. So here's something I always hear students kind of say, well, isn't that good debt? Isn't that good debt? Have you heard that? That's not that bad. It's not bad. That's not that bad to have student loans because it's good debt. So I want to just talk through where this idea comes from, good versus bad debt. So it really comes down to what are you borrowing the money for? Are you borrowing the money for something that's going to increase in value, like a house or like an education? We all, if you have a student loan, that you have a student loan is you're investing in yourself to increase your future earning potential. If you have a mortgage, we know that houses are not guaranteed. I mean, to go up in value, 2008, taught us that. I would never suggest, just throwing all your money in a house and saying, that's my investment. But typically, on average, historically, houses will go up in value. So that's why you can kind of hear people say student loans and mortgages are good debt. And I just want you to think about, I don't like that word. I don't like good debt. I think it's still best to avoid it as much as you can. Like Dr. Bennett talked about, get that shorter term on your mortgage. Don't take out more student loans than you need. try to minimize all of your debt, but if you are going to have debt, make sure that you're borrowing against something that's going to appreciate or go up in value. The bad debt that I've got listed up here are car loans, student loans, car loans, personal loans, credit cards. So what these things have in common are the thing that you're financing, the car, or the random purchases on a credit card, or a personal loan, which is just totally, unsecured, just for whatever you need. You're not buying something with that loan that's going to go up in value. You're going to buy something, and what you buy, like the best case is a car. You're going to get some use out of it. You need a car, you need a place, you need a way to go, but your car declines in value over time. So you've paid extra in the form of interest payments for an asset that's going down in value. So anytime you are financing a depreciable asset, an asset that's going down in value over time, you want to minimize that debt as much as possible. So most of you are students, and so I did want to make sure that we just talk about student loans very briefly. So like I said, they're not the worst kind of debt to have. It's necessary sometimes. I put myself through college. I didn't have much kind of financial support from my family, so I had to take out student loans myself. But a few things I wanted to talk to you about is make a real budget. So at our next session next Monday, we're going to talk about more about budgeting and tracking expenses and how to minimize your expenses as much as possible. Just think about every purchase you make while you're living on loans instead of living on love. You're living on loans right now, and you spend $10 on lunch. It's not $10. It's $10 that you're going to have to be paying for for the next however many years after you graduate, plus interest. So try to minimize your loans as much as possible. And then once you graduate, try to pay them off as quickly as possible. So I'm going to show you a tool here in just a second that you can plug your information into, and it can run some different scenarios and show you different payment plans and how much money it'll cost over time and that kind of thing. But the thing to really focus on is there are no early payment penalties. So pay extra as soon as you can. I made a kind of a deal with myself that until my student loans were paid off, I was going to live like a student. So when I graduated, I had some student loans, and it took me about 2.5 years to get them paid off. But what I did is, as soon as I graduated, I had my good paying full-time accounting job, but I put myself on a budget that was pretty much the same as what I had been living on as a student. I kind of told myself that until my loans were paid off, I was still in student mode, still eating the ramen and not going out, not spending a whole bunch of money. So it was a big happy day when those student loans were paid off. So if you have loans, I recommend that you go to this website here that I've linked, and I can put this down in the notes too, I believe. This is federalstudentaid.gov, studentaid.gov, and it's a loan simulator. So what you can do is go through and work through your personal scenario. So I'm not gonna work through these with you because everybody's is so individual. You don't have to necessarily create an account though. So where it says log in and start and create an account, you don't have to do that. You can just say start from scratch, and it'll just walk you through. So you have options here. I want to find the best student loan repayment strategy. So there's a standard repayment plan where you just pay an equal amount of payments over a period of time. There's also payments that are based on your income. So you can find a student loan repayment strategy that works the best for you, and you can compare the different strategies. So that's that one. For any of you who possibly are already paying on your student loans, or if you get to that point and you are struggling paying your loans, there are different options for new repayment. This one is the one I would really recommend the most for most of you right now. So you're in a situation where you feel like maybe you need more money. So this third scenario, you say start from scratch, put in any loans that you already have, and then add potential new loans, any loans you're thinking about taking in like future years. And it's it really gets personal. That's why I'm not going through all these different scenarios, because it really is so different for everybody, every situation. But it asks you, what year are you in college right now? What's your current loan balance? What are your current rates? How long until you think you're going to graduate? What income do you expect to make? when you graduate. What are your priorities? Do you prioritize paying it off really quickly, or do you prioritize maybe an income-based repayment where you think you might get some forgiven at the end? That kind of thing. So if you have student loans, I highly, highly recommend this website, again, studentaid.gov, and you look for the loan simulator, and you can work through these scenarios. I think it's just really good to be as informed as possible about any debt that you're taking on. The next thing I want to talk about is credit cards. So I know, and y'all can just do like show of hands. If you, just about time for high school graduation, you're getting the cards in the mail from like aunts and cousins, and they're sending you, $20, $50 check. Around that same time, you start getting an influx of credit card offers. These credit card companies know, they just know you're going to school, you're about to be independent, you're about to be on your own. They start inundating you with all these credit card offers. And so I think it is a good idea to have a credit card, a credit card, one, especially if you are in a situation where, maybe you don't have a safety net back home, if you're kind of supporting yourself. There truly might be an emergent need for it. And credit cards can be useful to grow and improve your credit score, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes, how your credit card use and credit card payments can improve your credit score. But I just want you to be aware of how to look at and how to compare these credit card offers. And I wanted to show you, again, another website recommendation. For these excellent credit card offers, this is NerdWallet. And NerdWallet is a legit site. We have some of our professors here in Kovac will publish articles here and there giving financial advice, so you can search for us there. But it kind of compares and gives you some ratings on different credit cards. Just as a comparison, so the average student loan rate right now for a GSW grad is 4.99%. These excellent credit card rates, and it really is, when it says excellent, it means this is as good as it gets. This really is about as good as it gets for student credit cards. We're talking a variable APR of 19.24 to 29.24% a year. 30% a year for a credit card. 17%, 26%, 17 to 26. So this is what you're paying. Now, Dr. Bennett talked about the stock market returns and how much return you can get after you invest. And he said, stock market returns historically are one of the highest, best investments you can make, just kind of overall, big picture, over a long period of time. You said, what, 10, 11%? Mm-hmm. So as good as it gets on the investment side. So when you're talking about a credit card and you're having to pay 30% interest, that's a bad deal. That is a bad deal. So how do you avoid this? How do you not, I just told you it's good. You might want to have at least maybe one credit card for investments. How do you avoid paying this 30% interest? The one thing you can do that will avoid this interest is to pay off your credit card every single month. And it's even better if you can pay it off every week or every time you get a paycheck. So I want you all to think about getting in the habit of not waiting for the statement to come in the mail and then paying the balance. But if you make a payment with your credit card, just go ahead and make a payment. Or every Friday, every time you get a paycheck. If it's every 2 weeks, and every 2 weeks. Go ahead and pay that credit card off and keep it paid off. That will improve your credit score, and that will keep your credit availability high and your debt utilization low. What I do not want you to do is, number one, do not miss a credit card payment. So a lot of these will have introductory APRs of 0%, and then if you mess up, if you miss a payment, if you make a payment late, if you only pay the minimum payment, then some of these higher rates kick in. As long as you're paying off your credit card in full every single month, with almost all credit cards, you're not going to pay this interest. You miss it, or one time, if you make the minimum payment one time, and you don't pay that balance off for whatever reason, you're having a hard month or something like that. Hopefully you can see this smaller print, but this is a balance of $3,630. So the total amount owed on this credit card is $3,630. $630. The credit card company says, you know what, we'll keep you in good standing, we won't report you getting bureaus, we're gonna consider your account good and solid, as long as you give us $100. So that's your minimum payment. When you start making these minimum payments, I mean, it is tempting. It is tempting, believe me. It's right there. You've got much better things that you feel like you want to do. You want to go on a spring break trip or whatever. If you pay this $100, you have, let's see, if you make only the minimum payment, you don't make any other purchases on this card. Nothing. You just are trying to pay off this balance of $3,630 that you spent for whatever reason. It will take you 12 years to pay that off, and you will end up paying a total of $8,107. So the credit card companies are required to now print this information about minimum payments on their statements. And again, minimum payment of $100, so you only make the minimum payment. You don't make any other purchases on the card. You put it in the drawer, you cut it up, you never use it again. All you're doing is trying to pay this balance off. If you pay $100 a month, it's going to take you 12 years to pay off the balance. A total of $8,000. Minimum payments are never a good idea. And the other thing is that you lose your what's called a grace period with the credit card company. So as long as you're paying it off and paying it off and paying it off and paying it off, I told you don't pay interest. I actually, and this is a little bit probably embarrassing, I probably should know, but I don't know what my credit card rate is because I pay it off every month. I never pay any interest, so what does it matter to me what the rate is? It could be 40%, I don't know.
You mentioned that grace period. If you don't do that, the minute you use that card, they start charging you interest.
Yeah, and it's your average balance, average daily balance.
Mhm.
So you make that minimum payment, and now you're instantly paying this 30% or whatever interest rate. And then you have to keep it paid off in full for, I want to say 2 full billing cycles or 2 full months your grace period back. So it can cost you a lot of money to just make that minimum payment. So as much as you can, pay it off, pay it off, pay it off. And like I said, credit cards are not all bad. They really can increase your credit score. And in just a second, I'm going to talk about all the reasons that you want that credit score to be as high as possible. So we all kind of know in general a good credit score is good, but we don't want a bad credit score. But I'm going to tell you a little bit specifically about why you want to keep that credit score in good shape. First, let's talk about what makes up your credit score. So it's calculated by a few different bureaus, and you can get a free credit report annually. So it's a good idea, just a good practice to get into to keep a good review on your credit score. Make sure that everything that is shown as your debt is really your debt. Nobody's kind of stolen your identity or something like that. I have a Capital One card, and Capital One monitors my credit score for me every month and kind of tells me, when I log in to review my activity, it'll tell me kind of what my latest credit score is, and it'll give me alerts if somebody tries to open up a new account in my name. So that's nice. But if you don't have that, you can just Google free credit report, and you can get an annual free report. So here's what the credit score is made up of in general. It's a little bit of a mystery, but this is a good big picture, good idea. 35% is your payment history. That means you pay your bills on time. So that's huge. The biggest chunk of your credit score is just paying your bills on time. So pay your credit card, pay the student loan if it comes due, pay the car loan, your utilities, any bill you have, pay it on time. The next thing is utilization. So 30% is utilization. And what utilization means is how much of your available credit are you using. So if I have a credit limit on my credit card of, say, $10,000, and I keep that just about maxed out every single month, then my utilization is high, and my credit score will go down. If, on the other hand, I have a credit limit of $10,000, and I put maybe all my purchases on there, but I pay it off so that my balance stays low, then my credit utilization is low, and my credit score goes up. 15% of the score is length of history. So there's not a whole lot you can do about that one. The length of history is just how long have you had an open account. So that's why, I do think it's a good idea if if you can be disciplined and responsible, it's a good idea to have a card, so that you do get some history kind of built up. If you can keep that balance low, so keep the balance low, pay it on time. The longer you do that, the longer your length of history gets and the higher your credit score goes. Credit mix is a little bit of an odd one. It's just kind of the types of debt you have. So is it credit cards? Is it mortgages? Is it a bunch of different things? Is it one card? Is it 10 cards? And then new credit, it's roughly about 10%. So new credit is if you're going and applying for new loans constantly, if you're constantly opening up new cards. So I know some people, or there's some different blogs and things out there that will do what's called churning credit cards, where you kind of just open up credit cards constantly and get points and rewards and free flights and all that fun stuff. So that's a thing that people can do, but it does hit your credit score, it'll lower your credit score as you're opening up new lines and having new inquiries into your credit. Why do we even care? Who cares about a credit score? Why does it matter? I kind of wanted to put some numbers to it. I can tell just from like anecdotal conversations with other people, differences between good scores and bad scores. Obviously, you're going to get lower interest rates if your credit score is high. So if your credit score is high, let's say 750 and up, is considered a very good credit score. If you can go to a lender, and I'm talking about like a car loan or a mortgage, you can go to a lender and show them a good, very solid high. That means that you have a good history of paying your bills on time, you're less risky, and that lender's going to give you a lower interest rate. So you're going to save money on the interest rate. Typically, and I think this is about right, rates are higher now than when this was created, but I think the difference is still solid. On average, you're going to pay almost a 10% higher rate on a car loan if you have bad credit versus if you have good credit. If you have good credit, you can save 10% of that interest rate. The same would go for a mortgage. So I don't think that you're going to see as many dramatic as a 10% difference. Dramatic. Easy one, the gimme. You know, if you're less risky, then your rates will be lower. I think everybody kind of knows that one. This is maybe surprising though. So there are other ways that businesses use your credit information. If you have a car, you have to have car insurance, right? So part of the rate calculation for most insurers. So on average, somebody with a bad credit score is going to pay about $1,300 more a year, over $100 a month more, just because your credit score is bad. On the flip side of that, to make it more positive, if you keep a good credit score, good credit history, low utilization, not a lot of cards, try to keep a very lengthy history, so get started on it, then you can save over $100 a month just on your car insurance. Just on your car insurance, just by having a good credit score. Most of you are renting apartments right now, so you know about security deposits. When you go to rent an apartment off campus, you have to put down a security deposit, right? They use your credit score for that. So if you're calculating how much to put down on an apartment, or maybe you're moving, so some of these campus, like really close to a college campus, you may see a little bit more standard. They may just have like this is a security deposit and that's that. When you go to rent somewhere else, though, maybe after college that's not right here next to the campus, it gets a little bit more variable, and they're going to tell you, here, let's apply for this apartment or apply for this rental house. Put in your application. So you're going to do the application, and you're going to put your name and your income, and they're going to ask you for your social security number, and you're going to sign something that says, yes, you can run a credit check on me. When they run that credit check, your credit score comes back bad. You have to pay a higher security deposit, on average $1,000 more. Security deposit that apartment complex or that landlord is going to hold on to until you move out. So about $1,000 more is what your credit score is going to cost you or save you when it comes to your security deposit. And this one, I really don't think a lot of people are aware of. So a lot of you are business majors, and this is actually more common in business than overall. But overall, 47% of employers run a credit check as part of the hiring process. Did y'all do this with banks? Yeah. So if you're going to go work at Chick-fil-A, in the drive-through, I don't think they care about your credit score. I don't think that's part of it. But every job I've ever had as an accounting professional, a business professional, where you're working in an environment that you have either access to people's money or knowledge of people's money or access to other people's social security numbers and financial information, access to a company's proprietary information, they want to know that you're responsible. And so this is totally legal, totally a fine thing to do. 47% again of overall employers, I would say even way higher for business. Like a bank, almost 100%, even a teller
banks
position
would,
is gonna run a bank's gonna run a credit score even for like a teller, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You think about it, if they have poor credit, they're much more likely
To steal. Yeah, it just, I mean, so it's legal, it's something they do, so you could even lose a job, or a prospective job because of bad credit. Again, trying to flip it to more positive, keep good credit score, and save money on various things. It just sets you up for success, save a ton of money on interest rates, save money on things like car insurance, security deposit, get better jobs, which then gives you more money to invest, right?
To become a millionaire.
To become a millionaire.
That's right.
That's right. So that's what I've got for y'all today. Again, I tried to kind of hit the high points of several questions that I've heard from students over time. I hope you can come back next week. So next week we're going to talk more about kind of budgeting and tracking expenses. I'm going to try to answer some tax questions that I've heard from students. I'm not promising to be a tax expert, but I'll try to do my best there. So we
Well,
appreciate
in the interest of keeping the video within an hour, we'll go ahead and turn it off and take questions if we have any questions, but, I guess what we ought to do is maybe I'm gonna put my email address.
Oh, yeah, sure. I've got that on the
and Ms.
next.
Taylor can do that. Yeah.
Actually, there we go, right here.
Okay, you got it, okay, yeah,
Right here.
there we go.
So this is Dr. Bennett again, Professor of Management here at GSW, and it's robert.bennett@gsw.edu. And then that's me, Danielle Taylor. I teach accounting.
And I'll never forget her name again. I looked at her and I went blank.
Danielle.taylor@gsw.edu. So if you're watching the video, yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to us, send us an email, and I'm going to go ahead and cut the recording and we'll
Very
take
good.
questions.
All right, thanks, everybody.